that you have the courage to speak and to tell the truth, because I hope it affects a lot of lives. A lot of young people coming into polygamy, raised in polygamy, they don't know yet what it means to have those years and years of isolation and work for menial jobs. I hear all the time, well, in polygamy, a woman can go out and have a career. What career? You're having a baby as often as possible. You're tending anywhere from 12 children, or in Irene's case, she was 30 some odd children, while her sister wives worked at minimum wage jobs.
And she still never had her needs met.
And she was still having a baby all the time, pregnant,
Right.
trying to take care of these children in real poverty circumstances. And this is more common than not, because where's the money going to come from to sustain all of these children?
Right.
And this concept that they could actually decriminalize and not bring charges against men that will not take care of their families is the first step to really going backward in women's rights.
Right.
It'll just go downhill. And
Exactly.
people don't realize it, but it'll
Exactly.
have other negative financial consequences on the entire state.
You bet it will. It really will. They've all, to me, it's just like justifying what's already gone on, which is that we've ignored polygamists. We haven't prosecuted people. We've allowed it to get out of hand, and it's been illegal for all these years. And they have had many, many, many children being hauled back into the communities, knowing that there's perpetrators, molesters, that they're taking them into a community that Warren Jeffs says this is what you do and this is okay, and he was the leader, an example. He on tape and video examples about how to treat children,
Right.
and what to do, and then they're moving children back into these people who believe them, and mothers and fathers who've let them go and who've taken their children and just given them to other parents. Warren said that's the way it is. So I think that decriminalizing polygamy would, to me, that's just like saying, let's make the mafia legal. Let's say they can be, that they're legal.
Right.
Oh, let's let them, and let's hope that they tell us what crimes they're doing within their mafia crime base. And that might not make sense, but it's like, let's legalize a crime
And
so that they can tell us about the crimes they're going to do.
And let's accept it as an acceptable way of life and pat them on the back and love them and bring them into the neighborhood.
Polygamy in itself is abusive.
It is abusive.
I never
It's
thought I would
enslaving.
say that out loud.
It
I
is.
never thought, but the more I hear, the more I research, the more I work with people, the more I have done and talking with people all over, I realize it is, polygamy in itself is abusive.
If you are forced,
Not just for women, to
If
men
you-
too. I'm finding it's abusive to many men as well.
if you're going to lose your salvation,
Mhm.
if you don't sacrifice everything you feel, everything you want, every dream you ever had, and your mate to anybody that wants them, that's abuse.
It's abuse.
And it would be abuse for a man too.
Yeah.
And these men that dare to think and don't follow the leader, a lot of them have lost their businesses, their homes, their families have been taken away. Warren Jeffs did this.
Well, and even outside of the FLDS, there's families who've lost families because they've left. So there's definitely a severance, and it's huge. It's huge. And you risk that. In fact, I wanted to say there's many, many people who would be standing up talking with you and me if they dared do it. They don't want to lose their family. They don't want to lose relationships. They don't want to lose friends. That's their sisters, their brothers, their families, and they feel strongly, but don't dare speak out because they will be cut off immediately from their relationships and friendships.
Comparatively few of the women that have left have been able to get their children, especially all of their children, out because they were told the children belong to the men and they can't have them.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of men, polygamist men, have won these children in court battles, and courts have given them back to the husband after
Yeah.
the wife escaped. I find that absolutely ironic.
Yeah, I don't understand it either, especially when somebody's there breaking the law. Criminals breaking the law got to have custody of the children. What is that? What does this say? This is, again, going back to all the laws that have been ignored.
Right.
And I advocate that everybody stop calling these things raids. I always did. My mom did. I grew up with all these raids. if you think about it and you really read the history, the governor and Utah and the LDS Church and whoever got together and decided to supposedly raid Colorado City, their intention was, you know what, this is bad. They're taking from us, they're on welfare, they're food stamps, they're marrying 13-year-old girls, they're
And blaming us
trading
for
them,
it.
they're doing all this
Yeah.
crime. It needs to stop. Let's stop this now. And because you people and everybody out there don't understand horrible things that are going on and have for all these years, then you see it as, oh, those poor women, those poor children, they're just trying to live their religion. And that's what they say. We're being persecuted. We're just trying to be good. My sister was married off at 13 years old, and she said she wanted to be. She said that was my choice. What 13-year-old girl
Couldn't
had a
even
childhood
imagine.
crush on some old man? They married her without my parents' permission, and that was it. She consummated her marriage. That was it. You know, and this was going on way back when, not just with Warren, not just with
It's been going on
the
all
current.
along.
It's been going on all along.
I-
And to me, it's not okay.
Well, I
So-
was born and raised in the AUB.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My father was an independent. And I have a sister that stayed in the AUB, but she married, in my opinion, she was a child,
Mm-hmm.
15, I believe.
15 as a child.
And my other sister married into the Mexico cult, the LeBaron cult.
Mhm.
And I was married into the FLDS. And this is just in my family, because my mother was an all-red, coming from the AUB, 3 daughters going 3 different directions.
Mhm. Yeah.
And the choices were not choices because the men went to the father or whatever. And I know that my mother tried to block my marriage,
Mhm.
and it didn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. You were assigned as well.
So I was taught very harshly that if anyone ever asked me if I had my free agency, I must tell them the truth and know that I did. Yeah, I had my free agency to let them
Yeah.
pull the trigger or not, you
Yeah.
know.
And that reminds me of Irene's book where she talked about how she was forced to accept this new sister wife into the family. I read that part and I laughed because it was so funny and yet it was so terribly sad at the same time. And it brought back me. I only did that once. I only had to once take that girl's hand and put that girl's hand in my husband's hand and know they're going to be sleeping together that night, let alone how many times Irene had to do it. And when she talked about she had free agency in her life, supposedly, and she was so distraught and so forced to accept that marriage that she takes the girl's hand and throws it in her husband's hands and says, there, you know, because she'd had, how many wives by then did he have?
He ended up with 10.
Numerous wives, and she'd had it. And this is, oh yeah, I had a choice. I gave that wife to my husband. Yeah, I had a choice. No, she didn't, but that's the whole idea here is
Well, and the whole idea
freedom
is
is
to,
your choices, as big as your choices.
well, how can you
That's it.
complain about it? You gave her to me. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, exactly.
And if you didn't, you were going to lose your soul.
In fact, man,
And maybe your children.
I've had people say that to me. How dare you be upset about this? You're the one that talked him into marrying her. And I went, you know what? You are missing the whole point here. I talked him into marrying her because if I didn't, I would not have my children. And those children were the most important thing in this whole wide world to me. And I would have done anything for my kids. And that's what I was told I had to do. Accept my husband so I could get to heaven, so he can get to heaven, so I can have my children.
Well, so many of the girls were told that God showed them that they should marry
Oh,
this
yeah,
man, and
yeah.
they should pray until they got the answer, and that should be
Yeah.
their choice. And I
Yeah.
know that because a lot of these girls were my sisters and cousins.
You bet. That was the coercion, man. Is like you pray about it until you get the right answer, and
Well,
the answer is the one I tell you to get.
I
Yeah.
was told that I had to fast and pray and couldn't eat until I got the right
Oh,
answer.
yeah.
No, so
and the
you-
right answer is already predetermined. For
Yeah, you get the same answer.
You know, I laugh about it, but it's so sad. It's so true. And my dad was going to marry a woman who had that same experience. Her father took her away and locked her in the room because he didn't want her to marry my father as a fourth wife, and told her that she could come out of that room when she got the right answer. Same thing, locked her in the room. I think it was almost 2 full weeks before she got the right answer that he wanted to hear so she could eat. And then years later, she said, oh yeah, I prayed. I got the right answer. I did the right thing. How sad. How very sad. And she had a choice too, you know, supposedly, by everybody say.
Yeah, I think my mom made a mistake
Listen.
raising me. She told me God was just, and when I was only 11 years old, I went out and asked God if he was just, why there was no justice for everybody.
Wow, yeah.
And I couldn't understand that, and I knew I dare not say that. I would be in trouble.
Right.
I couldn't voice it to anybody, or I wouldn't even be welcome to live in our house, because I would be
Right.
so evil. And this is the whole thing, that if you don't feel what they want you to feel, if you don't pretend you're happy when you're just your heart's being torn apart, you're evil.
Yeah, I bring that up a lot in my book, is talking about those very feelings, is that I always felt something was wrong with me because I didn't feel the way I was supposed to feel. I didn't agree, then I was wrong. If I was being molested, I was the bad kid, because if you're behaving yourself and you're a good person, then God won't allow those things to happen to you. It was always put back on the
woman.
children, back on the little boys and girls, and then the women when they grow up, and the men, if their wives aren't behaving, get to be reprimanded by the men who say, get your wives in order. You know,
Right.
again, it's always about
Control.
that control, and the feelings are not okay. That's
No.
from child. People make comments on how well behaved the children are in a lot of these groups or in a lot of polygamous situations, and I thought, you know what, they really are, and in some it's okay the way they've been brought up in compliance, in a good way, not beating them up. But in too many of these families, it's what we're talking about. It's so coercive and so mean and abusive that they wouldn't dare. They would not dare get out of line. They've been threatened with us, all of us,
Right.
bad people coming and taking them to hell. We'll
Oh.
come and get them and take them away if they don't behave. This is the FLDS community. They have been waterboarded and till they stop crying.
Yeah,
They have been beaten.
My
They've
baby
been
was
locked in.
waterboarded.
Oh yeah, they've been beaten and locked in closets. Oh yeah, definitely. So the behavior again is pretty much comes in a lot of ways from abuse, from beating or else. You do it or else. And so it makes me sad. I want to say, yeah, they're well behaved because they had a choice to behave, not that they were told they would get beat up or kidnapped or death or whatever the threats are if they don't.
Well, when we were little, very little, we
Mhm.
were told that if we told anybody the way we lived or that we were polygamous kids, the welfare would come and take us away
yeah,
and
I
put
was
us in
told that.
foster homes, and we'd never see our parents again, and it would be our fault.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
we,
yeah.
the children, had the
Mhm.
responsibility of protecting our father.
It's still that way. It still is. And in talking about that people want to say that's why they should decriminalize it, so children don't grow up with that fear, and so they can't be persecuted or prosecuted as far as being polygamous, and they can say, here I am, I'm a polygamist, and this and that and the other. And again, that I've weighed that out because of advocating against, anti-polygamy. And I weigh it out. I weigh out all these things that I grew up with that fear, and
Right.
they use it. They
Oh, they-
use our parents and their parents and their parents
To hold over your
to
head.
use that over the children's head to keep
And
them
make
to
them
conform,
responsible.
to keep them responsible and to conform, and terrified that if something goes wrong, it'll be my fault. If I tell, if I'm raped, it will be my fault. Because if I tell anybody, it will be my fault. All these things about my fault, my guilt, my shame.
My father
and
goes to
brought
prison
up.
for his actions, it's
Because
my
if
fault.
I say something, it's my fault.
Right.
And if he gets in trouble, it's my fault again and again and again. And so,
But
to me,
this
it
is the
just goes.
whole thing I was pointing at about decriminalizing polygamy.
Mhm.
Decriminalizing polygamy gives them a free ticket to make all of the cause and effect of their behavior somebody else's responsibility, not their
Not
fault.
theirs. It's already that way.
I know, but it
It's-
gives them
it's just-
it
yeah.
gives you no legal recourse.
Right.
Now, just
yeah.
because they're not currently chasing them down or doing anything about it, they are investigating possibilities of laws
Mhm.
that they could do.
Yeah.
They are doing that.
Mhm.
And,
Yeah,
and
I
if
like
they
that.
pass
Mhm.
this and they get away with it, which these polygamists know that they're investigating other laws.
Mhm.
That because of what's gone on in Texas,
Right.
because they've come back against Yearning for Zion Ranch and dissolved enterprises and forced men to be responsible for their families.
Right.
And if Texas is doing that, Utah's frightened. So they bring this up and sadly somehow get Disney to promote Joe Darger's Love Times 3. Disney, how
Yeah.
can you even bring that on as a normal family? They know nothing about the mental and emotional and spiritual slavery.
Yeah.
So if we take away gradually, step by step, any consequences of one's behavior, then the women get the consequences of all the children with no recourse.
Mhm.
And that they've already got the consequences, but they aren't entirely without recourse. This will really make it big,
Mhm.
and this should not be. They already are tying up their businesses and nobody can touch it, and
Right.
and you can have a parental suit and he hasn't got enough money and you can't get blood out of a turnip. So already they found legal ways to be irresponsible. This gives them more. You say, well, it won't change it. It will deepen the effect and make it harder to change, to make them responsible for the possibility of new laws in the future.
Well, I think that the laws need to change all across the board.
They do.
Not just for polygamous families, but for, because there's crime in all religions that they can do just what you're saying. And they are,
Exactly.
again, are justified. Well, they do it, and they do it, and they do it, and they do it, and we know how to do this really well.
Of course.
We can do it. Yes, like you said, I'm glad they are doing research, and I'm so grateful for that, because something needs
To
to
be
be done. It's not okay.
Well, see, what's
It's just
happening is
not.
we realize
Yeah.
as a nation
Mhm.
that the prison system has become an industry here.
Mhm.
But that's
Oh.
because we punish and we don't force responsibility.
Mhm.
If a person had to be responsible for what they did, the prisons would empty.
Yeah, right up front, right off the bat.
But you
Yeah.
know and I know that when our families go to prison, they're martyrs to God, and it's a big hurrah.
It goes back to the indoctrination.
Exactly.
All of it goes back to
Right.
that their belief, and no
Right.
matter, and in fact, we talked about if you started literally enforcing polygamy, what would happen.
Right.
Say we had the space to
Right.
put these people in prison and enforce polygamy laws, and to do something about it. Would it stop? Would it stop?
No,
these
it would
polygamists?
create martyrs.
It
See,
would-
the system has got to
it's
change.
just
But let us not
because
put...
they say that it's God's will, and we're doing it, and we'll do this no matter what.
We don't see it because it's already creeping up on us that they're doing this. It's been doing it for a long time. It's getting
Oh,
bigger and bigger.
forever.
But
Yeah.
if we put a roadblock in the way by saying it's okay that nobody has to be responsible anymore, then nobody comes
Right.
back to the unfortunate wives that are enslaved to start with, and their children, and the taxpayer.
Yeah.
That's the responsible person. If no polygamist has to be responsible.
It's already really bad, in
It's
my
horrible.
opinion, and to decriminalize it will make it
Will make it
worse,
even worse.
way worse.
It will make
It will
real worse.
just, it will justify things that are already horrible and bad,
That's
in
right.
my opinion.
I think so too.
I don't see that it will make any difference. As if decriminalizing it's going to make people who are abusers come up and say, hey, by the way, I've been abusing my kids, by the way, that sort of thing. And as if that's going to stop them from feeling persecuted, because they'll find other ways that they'll be persecuted. I could go on and on about that
What
part. but-
Utah's polygamists and Arizona's in general, those that claim and blame Mormonism,
Mhm.
what they don't realize is this. They think that if they get this done, it'll be a big landmark for them, they can all be polygamists. What they don't understand is that since Canada decided to uphold their anti-polygamy law, there are massive amounts of Muslim polygamists moving from Canada to the United States.
Yeah.
There are massive amounts of Muslim polygamists moving in the United States anyway. There are so many that there are some areas in Michigan where they believe they're going to be able to take over the vote. If these arrogant FLDS polygamists believe this will give them freedom, they don't realize that their Muslim brothers are much more numerous by far than they are. The American polygamists are less than a third compared to the Muslim polygamists, I think, already in the United States.
Wow.
And as soon as they get this done and the Muslims want Sharia law, who's going to be in power? these
It's
guys,
scary. It's
it-
really
well, they
scary.
don't know what they're
Yeah.
doing. They're
Yeah.
so arrogant about gaining their power, they choose not to look at this. They have always chosen not to look at something they don't want to see. It's an
Mhm.
inconvenient truth. You know, this
Frightening.
is something that is coming forward. And what does that mean to women worldwide?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
this is the United States of America, land of the free and the home of the brave. Well, if we
We-
don't grab a hold of something here, there's not going to be any freedom.
We as women and a lot of men have been advocating for women's rights in other countries in forever, and we still are. Every time I open my computer, there's some other blog about women's rights, women's rights. Women's got to have this. We've got to stop polygamy. We've got to stop the rapes. We've got to stop the child bride marriages. We've got to stop all this prostitution that the women are being prostituted. We've got to stop this in other countries. And meanwhile, I feel like that everybody's
Nobody's looking at our country.
blinding, duh, what's going on here, right here in our United States. Where are our feelings for all of the women here who need the same kind of love and protection and honor?
We'd rather
Yeah.
look across the pond than look in our backyard.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to admit it's happening
Right.
here. If a man, any man, were to capture a bunch of young girls and sell them in the sex industry for the best years of their life, the prime years of their life when they're the most beautiful, and they were to be caught, they would go to prison, and that's considered a crime.
Right.
But if you capture those young girls and you breed them and have children by them and enslave them in the name of God and call it religion, nobody will touch you. And you can enslave them all their life and enslave their children and swap their children and put them to work, take their welfare, build kingdoms and towns off the government funds,
Right.
and call it freedom of religion, and nobody cares.
Right.
And it's
It's
organized
our religion. We
crime.
get, that comment that you said reminds me of when I was a young girl, and I heard many times from my aunts, from other moms, and from my dad, that the reason that men want to marry child brides, young women, is so they can train them the way they want them to be, train
Exactly.
them to do what they say, train them to be the kind of woman and man, and you'll do it my way. And so you're exactly right in that. And defining that is incredible, because that is the way it is. That's the only difference.
I remember
Mhm.
when I was a kid, somebody came in with the story that Uncle Roy had a 9-year-old bride. And I went to my mom and I said, Mama, is that true? And she said, honey, don't worry. He will take care of her, and he won't do anything until she becomes of age, but that's to keep her from getting out into the evil, wicked world,
Right.
and he will raise her up. Well, that 9-year-old bride, later when she left him, turned out to be my sister-in-law, and then I knew who it was.
Wow.
So it really happened.
And of age means as soon as you've started your period. So if you're a 12-year-old and you start your period, you're ready to be married.
Well, of
Yeah.
course,
Yeah.
if you can get pregnant, you're ready to breed,
That's-
because
yeah.
it's a religion of breeding.
Right.
It is not.
That's another thing, people don't realize this when they say it's a choice. I say, okay, all right, again, it comes back to you and I and everybody making a free choice. But do we have to have a child every year? Do we have to continuously have as many kids as God will let us have or give to us, and no birth control? And so therefore, it goes again. This isn't about choice. It's another one of those coercive indoctrinations that you do it or be damned to hell.
We didn't even know what birth control was, but we knew it was a sin.
Oh,
How's
yeah,
that?
it's a sin.
But you never
How
know
do you,
it.
oh, yeah. What are you going to do? I mean, like, what's birth control?
Didn't
You're
even know
right.
what it
You
was,
haven't
but we
got
knew
a
it was a
clue.
sin.
Mhm.
And we were
right.
told that we had to have a baby as often as possible.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's, again, the...
And I saw so
Oh,
many
my
women
word.
who were losing their teeth from lack of calcium,
Uh.
in their bodies and their minds, just going downhill.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about depression. A lot of people don't realize how much post-traumatic stress disorder is there from lack of sleep and fasting and praying till you get the right answer, and taking care of 23 or
Depression.
19 kids all day, and being pregnant and having a nursing baby.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
every woman that I've ever spoken to that had the courage to speak out was accused of immorality if she didn't accept polygamy,
Right.
or insanity if she did her own thinking.
Right.
There were
One or
no
the- yeah,
exceptions.
exactly.
There were no exceptions. And women that got so ill that they suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, and some of them that their family came and got them, or they went to a hospital temporarily for vitamin B or depression, the family used that against them as their insanity.
Mhm. Yeah,
That was,
that's
oh, see, I
really-
have a
That's
record.
really common. Or
Yes.
well, the insanity is having an evil spirit. And you need to fast and pray some more so that you'll get over your evil spirit and your evil thinking and your evil jealousy and your evil wanting to leave and your evil depression. And if you don't fast and pray and get over it, then
Yeah.
that proves that you're a bad person.
And that you're
And that
possessed
you're
of the devil.
Yeah, so.
You're
I can't
possessed
tell
of the
you how
devil.
many times I was told when I
Gee.
would question the perpetrators who were abusing their own children, raping their own children, and I would question my father about those feelings and those when you're
You know it's
supposedly
wrong.
baptized and you're told you have the gift of the Holy Ghost so that you'll be inspired, so the still small voice will tell you what to do. And I'd go and I'd say, this is not okay, this is not okay. And I was the bad person. I needed to fast and pray because I'm the one who's questioning that prophet of God who's molesting his children. I'm the one who's wrong. So there again goes back to blaming the women, blaming that I don't have any say in God, in my connection with God. I don't have a say because who in the hell am I? I'm just one of the girls. I'm just a daughter. I'm just a wife. I'm just Kristen. You
I was
know?
told that I was immoral. I was immoral because I didn't want my husband to take other wives.
Oh yeah. Well, you
if he
were.
couldn't, if
for
he couldn't
heaven's
have
sake.
sex, if he couldn't have sex with all the women he wanted, I was immoral.
That's right. Yeah.
And even then, I looked at him and I thought, "You've lost it."
You-
But you daren't say anything because it's
Yeah.
dangerous.
And you know, in some situations, I've had also people say, "Well, the Cody Brown family's not like that, and the Darger family's not like that," and I've always heard the AUB's not like that. You know, all these things. It doesn't matter. The bottom line
Is the same
is
indoctrination.
the same indoctrination, and the same way that you can dress all up, put on your makeup or not, wear that beautiful smile and say, see, I'm doing what God wants me to do, and my guy's a leader, and my guy's going to get me to heaven, and my guy, and by the way, I'm the best one of it. Oh, but don't tell anybody because I'm his favorite wife, and they all think that, and they're all working hard to please him in every way possible so he wants to be with them the most, and it's that underneath heartache that is not allowed, that
Right.
we've talked about over and
Right.
over and over again. Those women are not allowed to feel, or we are the ones who are evil. We don't have the right to have those feelings or those opinions. And there's so little respect for us as human beings, as human rights.